Right when you thought that you got into the weirdest of all texts, you get to The Story of the Eye by Georges Bataille. Georges Bataille was born in 1897 in central France, in the mountains of Puy de Dôme, and died in the 60s in 1962. When he was young, he had conversion to Catholicism, wanted to see a renewal of Catholicism. So, kind of, along the same lines as what we saw in Rismos, somebody that is nostalgic of this religious past. But that will come to an end as soon as Georges Bataille um, gets hold of Nietzsche's ideas. And by then, Catholicism doesn't make any more sense to him, right? So this is this radical shift, rejection of Catholicism, obviously rejection of fascism. The Story of the Eye was written first in 1934 when Bataille was traveling to Spain with his friend André Masson, but wasn't published until 1957 because you just couldn't publish something like that in the 1930s, right? Some text of that nature was obviously censored right away. Of course, it was circulating. It was circulating under the table already, but it wasn't something you could buy at a bookstore. So, in 1920 is when Bataille completely rejects Catholicism and decides to embrace the ideas of Nietzsche. And of course, you can tell that not only Nietzsche, but the Marquis de Sade is present in his writing. Um, so this triple rejection of Christianity, of communism, and of fascism, because fascism is in the 1930s growing everywhere in Europe, results in texts like this, right? Texts where we see rituals, sexual rituals that are recycling or imitating or parodying the Catholic rituals, but to perform, of course, sexual sexual acts uh, of of a different nature, right? I mean, we see human sacrifice. We see obviously a confrontation to all kinds of taboo. The ideas of Freud's and the idea of the surrealist, of course, are an influence on Bataille. Bataille was kind of on and off with the surrealists during his life, but at the time of the writing of the Story of the Eye, obviously surrealism is in the air, both in Spain and in France. So it is a deep influence on his writing. Okay. Also, the Story of the Eye is not an easy read because of its heavily graphic nature, but also the very disturbing nature of evil, the evil that is presented in the characters, in their acts, and in their connections. So evil is everywhere. Matter of fact, Georges Bataille wrote another essay called Literature and Evil, and I'm going to put a link to an interview where he explains what he means by that, right? Where he kind of sums up the essay and gives his own definition of evil and underlines that there's no such thing as literature without evil. We need evil. We don't read a novel, we don't read a story unless it's dealing with evil. Evil is in human nature. Evil is omnipresent, and evil is linked also to social constructions, to taboos, to repression, to breaking the taboos. So obviously, there are different kinds of evil. Not all evil is the same, and especially when it's linked to sexual practices, right? It becomes even more complex. But sexual practices for Bataille are a place where the human being, and that's following the idea of Nietzsche, although Nietzsche was not particularly himself, a sexual person, as far as we know. Bataille is. Bataille believes in some kind of transcendence or a recuperation of the spirit through this extreme or excessive sexual practices, something we've seen already in the Marquis de Sade, obviously. So please listen to the interview, and then after the interview, I will post another video about Miguel de Unamuno and the Surrealists in Spain.